Hello and welcome. I am Fen the GM, and welcome to Campaign Diary number 4. Just like last time was more focused on roleplay, in this session we focused more on fighting, combat encounters, and the dungeon that was at hand. Previously, the heroes had escaped from Grieger's Grotto, and now they were out in the world. They came to the town of Eaddham, run by Baroness Aramis, and they had caught word that something was up with the town. Some of the local youth had gone missing. Merchant caravans had also not shown up when they were supposed to, and they were investigating. And what they found was that there is a keep nearby, a fortified tower with that had been populated by werewolves, and so they were on the mission to stop the werewolves. Quick note from last time. In the last session, I forgot one big thing that happened, which was that EC stole away one of the prisoners that they had and killed them to try and do his dark ritual to take their soul. Ritual failed. The person is dead. He managed to make it look like the prisoner had just escaped, except Maleficent saw him do this, and so far has said nothing about it. He knows that she saw him, but she hasn't done anything. Also from last session, the heroes knew that they needed silvered or magical weapons. They would only be able to damage werewolves at this point with EC or maybe Cupid's magics. So they went to Winna, who has a forge. She runs the shop. That's who they bought some stuff from. They talked to her, and she agreed to let Bromdeer work the forge if he would teach her how to silver weapons. I gave the characters a choice that, in her inventory she has enough silver to make a silver weapon, or to imbue 3 of their weapons with silver, and that would fade after a week. After they're using it, after they're using the weapons, cleaning them, whatever, it would kind of wear off. So they decided, I think rightly, to silver 3 of their weapons, imbue the weapons they're already using, with silver, so that way they can affect the werewolves. And Winna was grateful for the opportunity. She when they met, was very impressed with Bromdeer. She has heard of the Forgeworn clan, and so the opportunity to learn under one of their master smiths was something that she relished. So last time they were there was this joke that, like, oh, she's falling for Bromdeer, but really it's more of a like a fatherly thing. She really admires him. He's a little bit older. He's like a equivalent of like a middle-aged man, in human terms, and she's a lot younger. She is on this frontier town, just kind of making her way. So there's an interesting story there potentially, if Cal is interested in kind of exploring more about the Forgeworn clan in our sessions, then that could be an interesting hook into that. So with their silvered weapons in hand, they set out. They talk a little bit more with the guard captain or the Baroness. I can't remember which one, but one of them, whoever it was, told them that there is a ranger nearby. He was talking about werewolves in the area, and everybody kind of dismissed him. But they thought that he had a stash of silver or silver weapons, so there was potentially a way to combat the werewolves that way. That was more for if they needed weapons to fight them. This challenge of a werewolf at this level for them is that they don't have any magical equipment. So getting them into a state where they could fight these werewolves on equal footing, or at all, really, was the challenge setting up this dungeon. I knew that I wanted to use werewolves. They're a really cool enemy. There's some interesting like tactics and setup stuff that they can do around like their sense of smell, and just it's a lot different from what they have been fighting. They've been fighting people. They've been fighting mundane beasts up until now. So having this magical threat, fairly low level magical threat, but still something of clear magical nature, including the ability that they have to curse the party and set up future adventures, was something I really wanted to build. So having the challenge of giving them the weaponry, the tools they would need to fight the werewolves was interesting. And so there was the ranger who could have given them, who could have silvered some of their weapons for them, potentially gone with them and been an ally. Was one way to do that. And because Bromdeer is, this master smith, I said that, you have the ability to do so. He rolled something, maybe a wisdom. It was some kind of wisdom check, I think, to smith the weapons, and it worked. It worked great. I think he rolled a 21 or something like that. So came out really well. I think I gave them a bonus in the last session that we forgot about, but I think it was, now that I think about it, I think they were supposed to have a +1 to hit in their first encounter, but we totally forgot about it. Oh well. As it turns out, they didn't really need it in the first encounter, because as they approach the keep, there's a clearing. They take a look around. There's thick trees and then a clearing about 50 feet. And then this about 40-foot diameter keep. 3 levels, stone, no windows to speak of, more like arrow slits every now and then around the outside. And they decide to stage a little ambush. They use prestidigitation and minor illusion to make it seem like the prestidigitation to make the smell of stakes, and the minor illusion to create the image of stakes, and to lure out any wolves, any werewolves that might be lurking nearby. That was an incredibly good call for them, because there was a patrol that goes around the outside of the keep. It was 1 werewolf and 1 regular wolf. If they had have just gone out, there would have been a chance that the patrol would have found them. Small chance that they would have just found it themselves, but I really wanted it to be more like a story element where they have to tell me that they're looking for it somehow or another, some other way, draw them out. Which is exactly what happened, without, necessarily knowing it. They drew these wolves out, attacked them. EC set himself up in a tree. They made use of some of the rope that Brav was very insistent on buying from the shop in the last session. So they ambush the wolves, they take them out fairly easily, and move on. In this session, Brav was not there for the first half of it. He had some other obligations he had to take care of, and none of the other characters felt strong enough to play him in combat. In most other sessions, I would have just said, okay, he's sitting off in the corner then. But for this one, I knew it was going to be tough, so I just played him in combat, which was difficult. There was a lot going on, and I didn't use him as well as I could have, or I think as well as any of the other players could have, by taking 5 minutes to look over his sheet. But they're all still pretty new, still kind of getting a feel for their own characters. There are a couple of them have forgotten some things about their characters. As we've leveled up, we've forgotten things session to session. For example, Grispy, or Gwispy, as he is very keen to remind me, should have been rolling 2d6 for his sneak attacks, because he is level 3 rogue. He was still only rolling the 1. Still did a lot of damage, but he could have done a lot more. And for Bromdeer, he had access to his maneuvers that he had forgotten about, because he didn't have a good way to notate them. Between Fantasy Grounds, which is what we use to play, and then D&D Beyond, where Brav has access to a lot of, I think all of the rule books, and it has the ability to create character sheets on there, which everybody has done, or Brav has done for people. Some things are getting lost in translation there, so I don't want to say that I don't necessarily think it's a good idea to have something in front of me, but for some of the players, it might be good to have a physical character sheet in front of them that they can actually take notes on and be their master copy. Fantasy Grounds is very good for automation. Everything is kind of calculated. Saves a lot of time, a lot of, a few seconds here, a few seconds there. In a 6-hour session, you're probably saving 10-15 minutes of math. But that's just something we're working out, and I think as we level up a little higher, as we play a little more, the characters won't have as many things thrown on top of them. They have most of their base class stuff in now, and now it's just a matter of power increase. The exception there is Squid, who plays the wizard, who will get more and more spell levels, but For all the other characters, it's really, they have their core stuff now, so it's just about remembering it's there, and being practiced in using it. So they entered the keep, having cleared the outside of its patrol, and immediately found 2 wolves and a werewolf. They fought well. They managed to use the spacing of the room. All the rooms in these encounters are 5 by 5 rooms with one wide corridors between them. And they managed to. I think the wolves, who normally get an advantage if they are attacking somebody who one of their allies is close to, I think they only got it once. So they cleared that room pretty easily, pretty quickly. Didn't burn too many of their abilities. Moved on. Managed to. There was a next room with 4 wolves. They managed to lure them back into the next room where they set an ambush. The 4 wolves wouldn't have been a very challenging fight, just even going toe to toe. But it was very good tactically, and it made it go very easily. They didn't use any abilities, I don't think. But that changed in the next fight. The keep is very simple. Basically, it's some old abandoned keep. There's nothing of value, really. Everything is just rusty, old, dusty, empty, disheveled. The werewolves are really just using it as like an animalistic den. There's nothing but like straw and really loose bedding for some of the people around, but they haven't even seen that on the first floor. It's all just been scrap metal, empty barrels, and moldy, musty sacks full of dust. The third encounter of the dungeon is something of a mini-boss. It was a werewolf shaman, just, a werewolf who can cast a few spells. Haste, acid arrow, I think they used blur, and then they had another one, I don't remember what it was, but I don't think it even came up at all in the combat. The characters all tried very hard to use the same tactic they had, using EC's Familiar to lure the wolves in that room back into the hallway where they could set up another ambush. This fight, I don't think I did well. I had said in the moment that once the snake shows himself and tries to get their attention, that, that was initiative. But I feel like it could have been a matter of they're surprised because there's this snake here that's trying to get your attention, and then it could book it. And that could be its round, and then the enemies could go. I feel like that's what I should have done, especially because that combat got super slow. There were 3 wolves, a werewolf, and a werewolf shaman. The party was waiting in the hall. There was a T intersection, and they were on each side of the intersection, and just waited for somebody to come in between them so they could get the flanking advantage, hit them twice when they could only hit once. And so they tried to get the snake to bring some of them back out, but they rolled really high perception. What actually happened was the snake entered the room underneath the wooden door, did his little, "Hey, I'm here, come and find me." Combat started, initiative was rolled. One of the wolves rolled the highest initiative, went first, and just chomped the snake, and he poofed. Then Wispy tried to go up and do the same thing. He managed to use his movement to move up and then move back. He rolled I think he rolled a 1 on a performance check to try and get them to just kind of goad them into coming after him. So the shaman was like controlling the wolves and was like, "No, you stay here." So it was kind of the standoff for a couple turns. The shaman ended up casting haste on the werewolf as like a test of what's out there. The werewolf runs forward with haste. Gets attacked by readied actions on both sides. Then he uses his bite, uses his claws, and uses another bite because he has another action from haste. He mostly was attacking Bromdeer through the entire fight. Really, my goal, and I said this to some of the characters or to some of the players, was I really wanted Bromdeer to get bitten and then to somehow fail his Constitution save to be cursed. Because Bromdeer has an AC of 20 and his Constitution bonus is a +4. So if I was going to get anybody, I wanted it to be him. So he took a lot of the brunt of the attacks from this, and that was kind of a meta thing on my part, but I figure, the werewolves see this party and there is a measly little wizard There is a measly, tiny little gnome. There is a big dragonborn paladin. And then there is this short, stocky, shield-wearing, hammer-wielding dwarf. And between the dwarf and the dragonborn, I felt like one of them was going to be targeted primarily. So I didn't feel very bad. Like I didn't feel like I was metagaming their stats. It felt more like it was a dramatic story point, and also something that these werewolves would do. When we talked about it, the players all seemed to think that would be funny or ironic at least. And Cal's purpose in the party, self-stated, is to be the tank, with 20 AC, and by the time he got to level 4, 54 health. At level 4, he's doing it. He's doing a pretty good job of it. So the encounter waited. They said they wanted to wait for them to come out. The wolves didn't go forward. We just fast-forwarded through 10 rounds of combat. The shaman went upstairs, at which point the players were like, okay, we should probably just go in. Which they did. They did well in that fight. There were only 3 wolves at that point, so it wasn't that big of a deal. Then going upstairs, they found themselves with a challenge. The next floor, the encounter was meant to be 2 werewolves, which would have been a challenging fight on its own because each werewolf has multi-attack. They can attack twice, once with bite, once with claws. But because they had let the shaman go upstairs, it was now 2 werewolves and a shaman. I won't give you the blow-by-blow. Suffice it to say that Brav came back in the middle, basically turned the tide. Bromdeer went down, did get infected by the lycanthropy curse. EC also got infected by the lycanthropy curse, although I don't know if it was that fight or the next one. EC was very close to death. Glenn was close at a couple points to taking massive hits that might have killed him. And he basically, because he does not have a silvered weapon, and he is with the party because they said they were going to keep an eye on him, he basically acted as the medic of the group. When any player went down, he kind of went in and dragged them out of harm's way and did a medicine check, try and stabilize them. So the fact that they were in danger when they were unconscious was kind of mitigated by the fact that they had Glenn there acting as this extra NPC, this extra field medic for them. Glenn is a totally normal boy, by the way. He has like a +1 bonus to dexterity, I think, and it's just average everywhere else. He gets no proficiency bonus to attack. He gets no special, finesse bonuses. He uses a longbow. So everything that he was rolling was pure average, and I don't think he failed a medicine check once, and he did like 3 or 4 of them during this dungeon. Eventually, they do clear that fight. They take a short rest, heal up. That's enough to level them up as well, so they do get up to level 4. They take on their new abilities. We go through everybody's characters, make sure they're all caught up. And there was definitely a lot of like head slap. Why didn't we know this already? And I think it's just because there's not a lot of looking at these stats outside of the game. I think, and I said this to the players, that if they, before the game, take 5 minutes, look over your character sheet, you might just refresh your memory. It might go a little bit easier for you. On top of that, one of the things beforehand was that a lot of the players don't have a player's handbook. I thought there was going to be more in Fantasy Grounds for them, but there's not as much as I thought there was going to be. Recently, Brav has access to everything through D&D Beyond, and we all have access now because we're in the campaign there. So that's another thing that we could do, is look through some of the stuff on there, and just your character sheets, just their character sheets at this point, would probably be fine, because I said this to them, I have so much going on. I've already forgotten a bunch of stuff too, just about the world, the setting, the things I wanted to have happen to be cool and dramatic. I can't be going through a character every session, but they know, they get it, and it's more on them, right? If you forget something in your character, like it's like, dang, that's on me. So that's just something, again, as the characters level up, there's gonna be less and less thrown on top of what they currently do. They're really at their current care like their current role, their current class. They're really feeling it now. So it's just about playing more. So they're on the second floor now. There is nothing more of value on this floor. It's all just kind of sleeping area, just general detritus of animals living in a space. They go upstairs and they scout around. They use, they just look around a bit, and they find the werewolf alpha, who is a large tile, a large creature. It's this massive werewolf. He's got 2 werewolves with him, and they try and sneak up. There's the room is a 5x5 square with 2 hallways. They try and split the party to ambush them that way. And Brav asks, "Hey, do we need to do a stealth check?" And I said, "Yeah, sure, why not?" Which immediately Bromdeer was distraught because he is wearing heavy armor and does not have any kind of proficiency in stealth, or skill-wise is not about it. He did fail, I think, with like a 7, rolled with disadvantage, of course. Everybody else made it, including Cupid, who is also wearing heavy armor. So that started off the fight. They got mostly into the positions they wanted to. They just didn't really have the surprise round that they wanted. They had already used most of their abilities trying to fight on the second floor. They got a couple of them back, just because of resting. Now they knew about, Bromdeer knew about his maneuvers that he could use. They knew about Quispy's, extra damage dice. So, they went into battle, and it went well for a minute, and then they got some dice rolls against them. There were a couple of critical hits that did a lot of damage, brought Bromdeer down, brought Quispy down. At one point, they were very seriously contemplating retreating. They managed to use the tactics of the battlefield, I think, to really turn the battle around. Glenn got both of the characters out. I think Quispy ended up spending like 90, well, he spent like half of the battle unconscious. Glenn stabilized him, brought him back into the middle room, kind of out of harm's way for the moment. He went back, saved Cupid, dragged him a little, a little more tough than a tiny gnome, but still managed to do it. Managed to stabilize him. Or actually, I don't think he even stabilized him. I think Cupid ended up rolling a natural 20 on his death save, so got up with 1 HP, which is the second time he's done that in this campaign. So that's kind of neat. Immediately took a health potion, went back into the fight, they finished between him and EC. They finished off the Werewolf Alpha, who was kind of in these smaller hallways trying to attack with disadvantage because he was squeezed into the smaller space. Managed to finish him off. They had a good sleep spell that took one of the wolves out early of the fight. Managed to finish that one off, finish the second wolf off. So it was a very close fight. It could have potentially been very deadly, but I think they did really well. They were saying the stress was really high, which was good. That's what I intended. Having these characters being on the verge. It was good. It went well. It felt hard, I think, but it didn't feel like they were outmatched. And also, I felt like if the party all went down, they weren't going to start attacking to kill. They were going to start attacking to knock unconscious, capture, and turn into werewolves, which could have sent the campaign down a completely different track. At one point I said half jokingly, like, this is going to be a werewolf campaign now. And Squid was like, yeah, actually, that sounds kind of cool. So, he and Bromdeer are currently infected by this lycanthropic curse. As far as they know they failed their constitution saves. I think every character but Quispy ended up getting bitten. So they know that Cupid was bitten as well. They don't necessarily know as characters that he is not infected, nor do they know that Bromdeer and EC are necessarily infected. We know they are. The characters don't. Just like they don't know if Glenn is infected yet, which I thought they might, but because the fight was going so long, I kind of nixed an idea that I had to kind of instantaneously call up any latent werewolf, where they would have found out who is and who is not a werewolf. And that was our fourth session. Was really fun. It was a lot of combat. We'll get a chance to do more roleplay in the next episode, or next session, I should say. And they'll kind of go back. They'll figure out what the deal is with Glenn. They'll collect their reward. Hopefully they'll find out what happened with Malphasette. And then potentially figure out what to do in the aftermath. They're going to have some curses to deal with. They have knowledge of where the slaver is, or might be at least, and are keen to track him down for various reasons among the party. So it'll be interesting to see what happens in the next session. I'm not 100% sure where it's going to go. It has a couple different branches it could take at this point, but I think I'm pretty well prepared for most of the choices that they could make. Unless they decide to go and become werewolves in some distant part of the countryside, that might be rough. So yeah, hopefully we're going to be playing next week. Like I said in the last episode, we're having just a blast playing, so we're trying to do every week now. I'm trying to get these videos out every week too, just so I can, I like having these so I can go back and be like, hey, what happened? What did I say happened? What's the deal? Because I don't write out line for line what happened, so having these videos is super helpful for me. Hopefully you guys are enjoying them. And yeah, I'll see you in the next session. Happy gaming!